How Generation Alpha is inheriting a world of extremes. A new study introduces a critical concept for understanding climate risk: unprecedented lifetime exposure, ULE, to extreme weather events. Using climate models, demographic data, and socioeconomic indicators, researchers quantified how often individuals from different generations are projected to experience extreme events, defined as exceeding the 99.99th percentile of what would have occurred in a pre-industrial climate. This lifetime exposure model redefines how businesses, governments, and communities must view climate risk, not just as short-term disruptions, but as cumulative, generational burdens. The research spans birth cohorts from 1960 to 2020, but it is the youngest, Generation Alpha, who are projected to carry the heaviest load. Generation Alpha, at the epicenter, children born in 2020 on the leading edge of Generation Alpha, face the most alarming risk profile. According to the study, 92% of the 2020 cohort will experience unprecedented lifetime exposure to heat waves under a 3.5 degrees warming scenario. Even under a more optimistic 1.5 degrees pathway, over 50% of this cohort is projected to exceed historical thresholds for heatwave exposure. In addition, 29% will face ULE from crop failures and 14% from river flooding, particularly in the global south and high-density regions. This isn't just about more intense events, it's about a radical increase in frequency over a person's life. Under high-emissions scenarios, today's children could live through 18 to 26 major heat waves, far exceeding the 6 or fewer that might have occurred without anthropogenic warming. Generational comparison. From 1960 to 2020, the study's strength lies in its comparative modeling. For example, only 16% of the 1960 birth cohort faced ULE to heat waves. For those born in 1990, the risk rose to 45% under a 2.5 degrees Celsius pathway. By 2020, the risk balloons to 92% under 3.5 degrees warming. This escalating curve highlights how younger generations are inheriting risks compounded by decades of emissions and delayed policy action. The transition from one generation to the next is not linear, it's exponential. The role of inequality, vulnerability isn't evenly distributed. ULE is not just generational, it's also deeply unequal across socioeconomic lines. By overlaying deprivation indices and GDP per capita metrics, the study reveals, under current policies, 2.7 degrees warming, 95% of children in high deprivation regions will experience ULE to heat waves. In contrast, only 78% of children in the least deprived areas face the same level of exposure. This underscores the urgent need for targeted adaptation investments, especially in low-income regions where heat mitigation infrastructure, disaster insurance, and health systems are weakest. Businesses with global operations must prepare for uneven climate resilience across their value chains and rising risk in emerging markets. What this means for business, ESG, and policy planning. The implications of this research extend far beyond academia. For business leaders and policymakers, the ULE framework offers a long-term lens for climate risk assessment. Scenario planning. ULE provides a data-backed method to stress-test climate scenarios across workforce life cycles, asset resilience, and supply chains. ESG strategy. Investors and sustainability leaders can incorporate ULE data to benchmark environmental equity, especially when disclosing Scope 3 climate risks. Resilience infrastructure. From smart cooling in warehouses to green urban planning, investments must align with the reality that climate extremes are now multi-generational threats. A future defined by exposure. The study projects that 613 million children born between 2003 and 2020 could avoid extreme heatwave exposure if warming is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Yet current policies are not on that path. As Generation Alpha grows up, climate extremes will not be episodic. They will be foundational. Businesses, governments, and financial institutions must now operate with the understanding that climate risk is generational, cumulative, and deeply unequal. How we respond today will define not just environmental outcomes, but the lived reality of the next century. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites by E&E Leader. For partnership opportunities, reach out to a member of our team today.